Comparative Reasoning Translation. It's available on Amazon. Vincent Yoga Sutras. The Yoga Sutras is definitely a very powerful and essential text. We'll start with Sutra 4.1. Higher functioning skills and talents are attained through birth, herbs, mantras, self-discipline, or samadhi. Sutra 4.2. The flow of universal energy brings about transformation. These transformations evolve you and push you forward into your next birth. Second translation for 4.2. The flow of nature's energy causes evolution in species, spiritual progress, and birth. Sutra 4.3. The flow of energy in the omniverse removes obstacles to evolution, like how a farmer removes dirt blocking the irrigation system, allowing the water to nourish the land. Second translation. Events do not directly cause evolution. They just remove obstacles like a farmer removes blockages in an irrigation system, allowing water to hydrate the land. So here it is saying the events in your life are just removing your shortcomings. And in the previous padas, if you guys didn't see my previous padas, it says that the yogi should accept pain for purification. Sutra 4.4. From the sense of individuality springs the created or fabricated mind. What they're saying here, that we think that we're separate from the universe and from existence, but we're not. Second translation. Different mentalities are formed from self-centeredness. So as soon as you say I, this, mentalities form, opinions form, all these other things form. 4.5. Consciousness is one, but it branches into innumerable different types of activities and countless thought waves. We'll go on to 4.6. Only the mental state shaped by meditation leaves no impressions or influences. Second translation. Only the minds born of meditation are free from karmic impressions. Sutra 4.7. A yogi's actions are neither good nor bad, whereas a non-yogi's actions are either good, bad, or a mixture of good and bad. Second translation. Actions performed by yogis are neither white or black, but actions performed by others are of three types: white, black, or gray. Sutra 4.8. Good, bad, and mixed actions create subconscious impressions, habits, and desires that manifest when conditions are favorable. Second translation for 4.8. Latent impressions are formed as a result of good, bad, or mixed actions, and they ripen corresponding results. So what they're saying here is the impressions in your mind and your habits, they ripen results around you because of your imprints on your brain, your memories, your personality, your intellect. 4.9. Even though it is divided by incarnation, place, and time, life is a continuous process. The uninterrupted close relation between memory and subliminal impressions cause the effects of actions to remain intact from one life to the next, as if there was no separation between births. Well, Jesus could remember what happened before his birth, and Buddha is said to have remembered all of his past lives. Second translation. Although desires are separated from their fulfillment by incarnation, space, and time, they have an uninterrupted relationship because the impressions of desires and the memories of them are identical. Big insect. 4.10. Since the desire to live is eternal, these impressions, memories, and desires are beginningless. Second translation. These latent impressions have no beginning point because of eternal nature of desire. 4.11. Impressions and desires are bound together depending on cause and effect. When cause and effect cease to exist, impressions and desires cease to function. So cause and effect, pain and pleasure, love and hatred, these things. Second translation. Latent impressions are dependent upon the cause, the results, the foundation, and the support. Therefore, if these cease to exist, the impressions will vanish. Second translation. Latent impressions are dependent upon the cause, the results, the foundation, and the support. Therefore, if these cease to exist, then the impressions will vanish. 412. The past and the future exist and are really a continuation of the same moment, but they appear different due to different conditions present. So here they're saying all that really exists is the present moment, because whatever you do in the present moment makes your history and makes your future. So past and future are almost obstructs of the mind. It's not that they are, but it's really just the same moment in continuation. Second translation. The existence of the past and the future are as realistic as the present moment. As moments roll into movements that transform into the future, the quality of knowledge in one's intellect and consciousness are affected. 413. With some of these sutras, I've read this book and wrote my translation. I've read it 100 times easy. So some of them you have to repeat. Like Sutra 412 is very, very intricate. There's a lot there. So we'll move on to 413. But these sutras are really quantum physics of yoga. 413. The past, present, and future intermingle rhythmically and interweave within the 11 dimensions. They change the composition of physical properties into gross and subtle. Second translation. The three phases of time are changing between manifest and subtle. They are shaped by the gunas, the driving forces of the universe, the essential attributes of matter. Sutra 414. The laws that govern the transformations taking place as time changes from the future to the past to the present cause modifications in objects, but their energy is never lost and the reality around you remains constant. So even though everything's changing because of the forces of the universe, the consciousness remains the same. Reality remains the same. Reality is held together due to combinations and checks and balances in the elements, nature, matter, and the laws embedded in the ether. I give 3 translations for this. By retaining its single identity through various transformations, there is reality to an object. 415. An object has the same identity in all circumstances. However, due to the differences of mentality in various minds, each individual mind may view the same object differently. Second translation. Due to the variation in the quality of mind content, the same object is perceived differently by different people according to their way of thinking. 416. An object exists independent of its cognizance by an individual consciousness. What happens to an object when your consciousness is not there to perceive it? You know, the whole if a tree falls in the wood and no one hears it, does it actually fall thing? Second translation. An object's existence does not depend on a single mind. Because if it did, what would happen if it were not perceived by that mind? 417. A thing is known or unknown by the mind depending on whether it is noticed by it. Second translation. An object remains known or unknown depending on the conditioning or expectation of the consciousness. Basically, if you're not aware about it, is it there? Yeah, it's still there. 418. The underlying consciousness that is ever present throughout the multiverse always knows the moods and state that the universe is in. It is ultimately the master of the mind. 419. The mind is not self-illuminating because it has to be viewed in the light of the soul. Second translation. The mind is an object of perception and therefore is not self-illuminating. Third translation. The mind is not self-illuminating because it is the object of knowledge and perception for pure consciousness. So here they're saying that the mind isn't self-illuminating because you can only see it in the light of the soul, and the soul's in the heart. 420. The mind cannot perceive the soul and objects at the same time. This is a big one here. So we all have heard probably, woe to he who gains the world but loses his soul. So in the Yoga Sutras, it says that the only way to keep yourself from further suffering is to keep your soul from becoming attached to the physical plane. Second translation for this is, the mind cannot perceive subject and object at the same time. So that's why what you're doing is you're bringing your mind back into your soul and making your mind and your soul one. And you keep your soul from projecting and getting caught up in samsara, worldly things. 421. Since multiple minds are able to understand each other, there must be an underlying consciousness that flows throughout the universe. Otherwise, there would be too much confusion because each person's reality would not be contingent on the facts of the reality of the others. Some of these you have to repeat. 422. Consciousness becomes aware of itself when it identifies its source with which is its soul, and then becomes one with it. I'm going to read this one again. Consciousness becomes aware of itself when it identifies its source, which is the soul, and then becomes one with it. Second translation. The unchangeable essence of being Purusha, the unchangeable essence of being, which in yoga they call Purusa, can only perceive itself through reflection in a changeable, interminable space, Chitta. So the soul can only perceive itself through your brain. When consciousness resides in the soul, it fully understands whatever it perceives. So as soon as your intellect and your whole mind, your ego, your intellect, your memory reside within your soul, you can perceive whatever you look at. You understand whatever you look at. Kind of like a child. A child's 2-3 years old, they watch a show and they don't know anything, and they pick up a word or a song. Second translation. When the mind reflects clearly, the seer and the seen, it appears all comprehending. 424. Though having countless desires and mental impressions, the mind exists for the sake of the soul because it can only act in association with it. Second translation, 424. Though the fabric of consciousness is interwoven with desires and subconscious impressions, the mind exists for the sake of the seer because it is between the seer and the outside world. So the brain exists so that your soul can experience reality. 425. Once you know the distinction between the mind and the soul, questions about the nature of the soul come to an end. This is another important one. They can be a little bit difficult to understand, so you're supposed to meditate on each verse. 425. For those who realize the distinction between Chitta and Atman, the sense of separation between the two disappears. Third translation. The one who sees the distinction between the mind and the seer, the confusion of the mind being what they truly are, ceases forever. So as soon as you understand what's your mind and what's your soul, the confusion of what you are is gone. 426. The consciousness is drawn magnetically towards the soul due to the gravitational force of its illuminated wisdom. So the mind is drawn into the soul, but when we don't bring it into the soul, there's disharmony. So in order to have peace, you have to bring the mind into the soul. Second translation for 426. When the main bulk of the mind through discriminative understanding moves towards the seer and towards Kaivalya, then the main bulk of the mind through discriminative understanding moves towards the seer and towards Kaivalya. 427. If you are careless, thoughts and conceptualizations may separate the mind and the soul. So when your mind and your soul become one, if you're careless, not heedful, if you're unmindful, the mind might go back into the physical reality. You might get trapped back into samsara again and suffering. 427. Ingrained habits may still arise if the mind loses omnipresence. I give 4 translations for this. When oneness is disrupted, the mind may begin to conceptualize again due to past impressions. So you gain enlightenment, you gain peace, your mind, your soul become one, and you might start thinking again, and that causes you to go back into samsara. 427. Breaks in enlightened consciousness may occur because of remaining past impressions. So your mind, things might bubble up in your mind. When that happens, you might fall back into samsara again. So for that, they say, strive diligently, study your sutras, and do your meditation and mindfulness. 428. You should handle these thoughts, conceptualizations, and memories by being mindful, replacing all negative thoughts and non-virtuous intent with their opposite positive opposites, with their opposing positive opposites, and eliminating self-centeredness. Second translation. The yogi should handle these mental impressions carefully by concentrating on what is happening with pratyahara, dharana, and stilling his mind and soul, dhyana. Looking inward, concentration, and meditation. When you lose desire to possess even the highest reward, then remain in this constant enlightened state of consciousness. Let me read again. That's the biggest beetle I've ever seen in my life. Huge beetle. Jeez. Okay, that's the hugest beetle I've ever seen. Second translation for 429. For one who seeks nothing and remains constant in discriminative insight, the Dharma cloud of samadhi appears. So when you stay in this state for longer and longer periods of time, your karma runs out and you see the cloud of samadhi, absorption of the soul, the mind, and the body in the present moment. Rapture, jhana. 430. Then afflictions and karma are ended. As a result, the afflictions and the influence of karma cease. So the pain and suffering that's caused by the mind cease. You no longer have to feel pain or suffer. Because consciousness itself is peaceful. 431. Then the shrouds of impurities are removed and the highest pure infinite wisdom is attained. After this, there is little left to be known. So your natural state is pure, but the flesh has impurities in it. So you're repurifying the mind and the soul. 432. Then the sequence of successive mutations cease to function. 433. The sequence of movements take place moment to moment, but is perceived only at the end of transformations. 434. When experience has liberated the soul, the gunas absorb into nature, and the power of the soul reabsorbs back into itself. Then perfect independence is realized. That's it. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you check out the other padas. This is going to be an ongoing study, and my version of the Yoga Sutras is available for sale on Amazon. Vincent Ferra, Yoga Sutras. Thanks so much.